My name is Hadley, and I am 28 years old. I never imagined that Thanksgiving night would become the moment I questioned my place in my own family. I remember standing in the kitchen, holding a glass baking dish fresh from the oven. The heat burned my hands, but I didn't let go. I didn't want to give anyone another reason to call me weak. Laughter filled the dining room, but I felt like I was standing outside. Looking in through a window, then Margaret, my stepmother, said it. Honestly, Hadley shouldn't even be here. She's not really family. The room went silent. No forks moved. No one laughed. I slowly turned around, my heart beating so loud I could hear it in my ears. Everyone was staring at me, or worse, looking away my father. Richard sat at the head of the table. He didn't speak. He didn't defend me. He just stared at his plate like it held the answers. That silence cut deeper than her words. My stepsister Evelyn leaned back in her chair with a small smile. Like this was a show she had been waiting for. Uncle George suddenly became very interested in his phone. No one said my name. No one asked if I was okay. I felt my throat tighten. My hands shook. Margaret laughed softly. Like she hadn't just shattered something inside me. She added, "We all know she doesn't really belong." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but instead, I smiled. Not because I was fine. Not because I agreed, but because deep inside my purse, resting against my side, was a thin envelope. One I had checked 3 times that day just to make sure it was still there. DNA test. None of them knew that yet. I sat down slowly, my legs weak. The smell of turkey suddenly made me sick. My chest felt heavy, like I couldn't get enough air. I stared at the table, at the plates, the food, the place card with my name written, like I belonged there. Did I? All my life I had tried to earn that seat. I helped. I stayed quiet. I swallowed every small insult and told myself it wasn't worth fighting back. But that night, something inside me shifted. Margaret didn't know it yet. But she had gone too far. As everyone started talking again, awkward and tense, I rested my hand on my purse. I could feel the envelope through the fabric. Proof, truth, a quiet kind of power. I didn't plan to use it that night. Not at first. But as I looked around that table at the people who were supposed to be my family, I realized something painful and clear. If I didn't stand up for myself now, no one ever would. And that was the moment everything began to change. I wasn't always aware that I was different. When I was younger, I thought every family felt a little cold sometimes. I thought silence was normal. I thought love was something you earned by behaving well and not asking for too much. My real mother, Laura, died when I was 10 years old. I still remember her voice, soft, warm. She used to brush my hair every night and tell me stories even when she was tired. When she passed, the house felt empty in a way I didn't have words for. 2 years later, my father married Margaret. At first, I tried to be hopeful. I told myself we could be a new family. I told myself she just needed time. But time didn't soften her. It sharpened her. Margaret never hit me. She never yelled. Her weapons were smaller and sharper. She corrected everything I did. That's not how we do it in this family. You're too emotional, Hadley. Why can't you be more like Evelyn? Evelyn was her daughter from a previous marriage. She was loud, confident, and always protected. When she broke rules, it was just a phase. When I made a mistake, it was proof. My father noticed. But not enough. Whenever I tried to talk to him, he would sigh and say, "Can we not do this right now?" So I stopped talking. I learned how to stay invisible. I learned how to smile even when my chest hurt. I learned how to say it's fine when it wasn't. But there were moments, small ones, that stayed with me. Like the time Margaret introduced me as Richard's daughter instead of my daughter. Or when she joked that I didn't look like anyone in the family. Or when she once said, laughing, "You're lucky Richard is such a good man." Lucky. That word followed me for years. As I got older, the feeling grew stronger. I felt like a guest who stayed too long. Like I was constantly being measured and always falling short. The night I overheard Margaret, Whispering to Evelyn was the night. Everything changed. I was walking past the living room when I heard my name, Margaret's. Voice was low. She might not even be his child. You never know what Laura was like. I froze. My heart dropped so fast it felt like I was falling. Evelyn laughed. That would explain a lot. I stood there, holding my breath, afraid they would hear me. That sentence echoed in my head for weeks. Then months I started looking at myself differently. My eyes, my hair, my smile. I compared everything. I searched for proof that I belonged or proof that I didn't. And that doubt, that quiet, cruel doubt was what pushed me toward a truth I wasn't ready to face yet. Because once you question where you come from, you can never unthink it after that night. I couldn't sleep the same way again. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard Margaret's voice in my head. She might not even be his child. I told myself I was overthinking. I told myself it was just gossip, just cruelty. But doubt is like water. Once it finds a crack, it keeps leaking in. I started noticing things I had ignored before. How my father and I didn't share the same smile. How no one ever said I looked like him. How Margaret watched me sometimes, like she was waiting for me to disappear. I felt like my own face had become a question mark. One evening, I stayed late at work just to avoid going home. When I finally did, the house was quiet. My father was in the living room watching TV. Not really watching. I stood there for a long moment, my heart racing. Then I asked him, Dad, can I ask you something? He muted the TV. What is it, Hadley? My voice shook. Have you ever doubted that I'm your daughter? The silence that followed felt heavy. Too heavy. He laughed softly, but it didn't sound real. Why would you ask that? I swallowed because people keep saying things. And because sometimes it feels like you're not sure either. He stood up quickly. This is ridiculous, he said. Your mother would be hurt if she heard this. That was it. No comfort. No reassurance. Just anger. I nodded and said, I'm sorry. Forget I asked. But I didn't forget. That night, I cried quietly in my room, the way I had learned to do years ago. Not loud, not messy. Just silent tears into a pillow. I realized something painful then. If I wanted answers, I wouldn't get them from my family, so I ordered the DNA test. It felt wrong at first. It's like I was betraying my mother's memory. I stared at the website for almost an hour before clicking confirm. My hands were shaking. When the kit arrived, I hid it in my closet. I didn't open it for days, because what if the truth destroyed everything I had left? But living with doubt was destroying me already. When I finally took the test, I cried again. Not because of pain, but because it felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't step back from. I mailed it the next morning after that. Waiting became its own kind of torture. Every family dinner felt fake. Every smile felt forced. Margaret's comments became sharper, more confident, like she already knew something I didn't. Thanksgiving was approaching, and I could feel it in my bones. Something was coming. I didn't know what the results would say, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever the truth was, it was going to change everything. Thanksgiving arrived with a strange heaviness in the air. The house smelled like roasted turkey and warm bread, but none of it felt comforting. It felt staged, like a picture-perfect scene covering something rotten underneath. I almost didn't go. I stood in my room that afternoon, staring at myself in the mirror. I looked calm on the outside, but inside, my chest felt tight. My purse sat on the bed. Inside it was the envelope, still sealed. Still powerful? I told myself I wouldn't use it. Not unless I had to. When I walked into the dining room, everyone was already seated. Margaret smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach her eyes. There you are, she said. I was wondering if you'd decided to skip. I forced a small smile and sat down. The dinner started politely. Too politely. Forks clinked. People talked about weather, work, nothing important. No one looked at me for too long. Then Margaret poured herself some wine. That's when she always got brave. Family traditions are so important, she said loudly. They remind us who truly belongs. My stomach dropped. Evelyn glanced at her and smirked. I stared at my plate, hoping it would pass. It didn't. Margaret turned to me. Hadley, don't you ever wonder where you really come from? The table went quiet. I felt heat rush to my face. What do you mean? I asked, even though I already knew. She tilted her head, pretending to be curious. Well, you're so different. You don't look like Richard. You don't act like us. Sometimes I think, maybe you're not really part of this family at all. That's when she said it, honestly. You shouldn't even be here. My heart felt like it shattered and froze at the same time. I looked at my father. He didn't look back. That hurt more than anything. Margaret said, I felt something inside me break open. Years of silence. Years of swallowing my pain. My hand slid slowly into my purse. I touched the envelope. I stood up. My legs felt weak, but my voice surprised me. It was steady. You're right, I said. Everyone looked shocked. Margaret smiled, thinking she had one. I shouldn't be here, I continued. If this table is built on lies. I pulled out the envelope and placed it gently in the center of the table. This is a DNA test. Between me and Richard. Evelyn laughed nervously. You're joking? I shook my head. My father finally looked up. Hadley. What is this? My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. The room felt like it stopped breathing. I read the words slowly, clearly. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Silence crashed down on the table. Margaret's face went pale. I looked straight at her. I am his daughter. Not by feelings, not by stories, by truth. My father pushed his chair back, standing up. Margaret, he said quietly, is this what you've been telling her? She didn't answer. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being questioned. And that was the moment the power shifted. After the DNA results were read, no one reached for their food again. The turkey grew cold. The room felt smaller, tighter, like the walls were listening. Margaret didn't speak. She just stared at the paper, her lips pressed together, her hands shaking slightly. For the first time since I'd known her, she looked unsure of herself. My father, Richard, was the one who broke the silence. How long? He asked quietly. Margaret looked up at him. How long have you been making her feel like she doesn't belong? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. That answer was enough. He turned to me, his eyes full of something I hadn't seen before. Regret. Hadley. I'm so sorry. I nodded, but I didn't rush to comfort him. Not this time, because something had changed inside me. For years I had waited for them to choose me, to defend me, to see me now. I was choosing myself. Margaret stood up suddenly. This is being blown out of proportion, she said. I was just asking questions. I met her eyes calmly. No, I said. You were planting doubt. Over and over again. And tonight, you wanted everyone to see me as less. The words surprised even me. They came out steady, clear. My father asked Margaret to step into the other room. Not forever. Not dramatically, just away from the table. And that was the moment I realized something important. Revenge doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like watching someone lose control of a story they spent years writing. The rest of the night passed quietly. People avoided my eyes. Some apologized. Some didn't. I didn't stay long as I put on my coat. My father followed me to the door. Please don't disappear, he said. I paused. I'm not disappearing, I replied. I'm just done shrinking. Over the next few weeks, everything shifted. Margaret stopped making comments. Evelyn stopped calling altogether. My father started reaching out slowly, awkwardly, but honestly. He asked about my work, my life. He listened, and I made a decision. I moved out. Not in anger. Not to punish anyone, but because staying meant staying small. I found a small apartment. Nothing fancy. But it was quiet. Safe. Mine. The revenge wasn't cutting them off. It was living without begging. Margaret lost her power over me the moment I stopped needing her approval. The lies she used to control the room had nowhere to stand once the truth was out. Sometimes, I think she expected me to scream, to fight, to fall apart. Instead, I walked away with my dignity. And that, I learned, is the kind of revenge that lasts. It has been a year since that Thanksgiving. Sometimes I still think about that table. The silence. The way my hands shook as I held the envelope. The moment I stopped asking for permission to exist, life didn't magically become perfect after that. Night. Healing never works that way. My relationship with my father is different now. We talk more honestly. He listens in ways he never did before. Sometimes he apologizes again quietly. Like he's afraid the words might expire. I don't rush him. Trust takes time to rebuild. Margaret and I barely speak. When we do, it's polite and distant. She no longer controls the room. And that seems to bother her more than any argument ever could. Evelyn never reached out, and strangely, that hurt less than I expected because I finally understood something important. Not everyone who shares your last name deserves your loyalty. The biggest change wasn't in my family, it was in me. I stopped explaining myself. I stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. I stopped chasing approval that was never meant for me. I started building a life that felt honest some nights. I sit alone in my apartment with a cup of tea and think about my mother. Laura, I imagine what she would say if she could see me now. I think she'd smile. I think she'd tell me I was always enough. The DNA test proved I belonged to my father, but it also taught me something deeper. Belonging isn't just about blood. It's about being seen, respected, protected. And when that doesn't happen, it's okay to walk away. I don't regret the test. I don't regret speaking up. I regret only one thing, staying silent for so long. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, if you've ever been made to question your worth, please hear this. You don't need to prove your value to anyone who is committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes, the strongest revenge isn't anger. It's peace. It's choosing yourself even when it's uncomfortable. And if this story touched you, if it made you reflect on your own life, I invite you to like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And sometimes, the truth doesn't just set you free. It teaches you who you were always meant to be.